Okay, so for the second part, we're going to look at factoring and square roots to solve quadratic equations. So in the first example on the back, we're going to take the left-hand side of this equation, x squared minus 4x minus 21, and we want to solve this equation by factoring. So if you remember, factoring is basically breaking down a larger polynomial, a larger quadratic, and breaking it down into smaller groups so that we can get your x values out of it. So factoring, just to kind of remind you, is if you have your standard form of your quadratic, 21, we want to come up with the numbers that when you multiply, you get 21, but when you add or subtract, you get 4. So 21 obviously comes in two different ways that we can write this. 1 times 21 gives us 21, but 3 times 7 also gives us 21. So we want to pick the two numbers that when you multiply, you get 21, and when you add or subtract, you actually get a 4. So out of these two numbers, 3 and 7, we can get a 4 out of that by actually subtracting them. So we'll play around with those positive and negative values in just a minute. So if we take this, we're going to come up with two groups with x leading in both of those groups. The two numbers that we're going to have inside of our groups, our second numbers, are going to be 3 and 7, because when we take 3 times 7, we get 21. But we want to take these numbers and be able to add them or subtract them to get a negative 4. So to get a negative 4, we have to have our negative, our bigger number, be the negative, which makes 3 our positive number. So 3 times negative 7 gives us negative 21. But we also get 3 plus negative 7 to be a negative 4. So when we backwards FOIL, so to speak, we'll get this original quadratic back. We're going to set this equal to 0, which means we're taking both of these groups and setting them equal to 0. So x plus 3 is equal to 0 means that x is equal to negative 3 as one of our solutions. X minus 7 equal to 0 means we're going to add 7 to both sides, so x is equal to 7 is one of our other solutions. So because we have an x squared, a quadratic, we should be getting two solutions or two answers for x as a final result. In the next example, we're going to be solving this quadratic by square roots. And how we do that is if we have no x, which means over here we had x squared and an x, like two different ways, not necessarily two different variables, but we have two different ways that we're writing x over here. We have an x squared as well as an x. Here we don't have just an x, we just have an x squared. So we're going to get all of our constants over to the right-hand side, so I'm going to add 7 to both sides. When I do that, I get 4x squared is equal to 72. Divide both sides by 4, so I get x squared is equal to 18. I have x squared is equal to 18, which means I'm going to square root both sides. When you square root a square, they're opposite operations, so we undo those. So we get x is equal to positive or negative square root of 18. The last step is to see if we can simplify this to anything smaller than the square root of 18. If you remember simplifying square roots, we're going to come up with two numbers that multiply to give us 18. So obviously 1 and 18 gives us 18. 2 times 9 gives us 18. 6 times 3 gives us 18. And we want to pick the pair that has a perfect square. So we're going to break this down. 18, 6, and 3, neither of these are perfect squares. So we can break the square root of 18 down into the square root of 2 times the square root of 9. Obviously it's still plus and minus. The square root of 2 can't get any smaller, but square root of 2. But the square root of 9 can get smaller because we can actually get a positive 3, a whole number out of that. And we can rewrite our answer for x to be positive and negative. We pull our whole number out in front. Square root of 2 can't get any smaller. So the square root of 18 actually simplifies to 3 square root of 2. So this is our final answer, but if you simplified it, you could also get 3 square root of 2, positive and negative is your final answer. Okay, so for the next time that we meet, you guys can work on numbers 4 through 12 on your own and see how far you guys can get. So the next time that we're all together, we can talk about these answers. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email me. Otherwise, I will see you at our next class meeting.